Vaccines prevent diseases. Let's take a look at the 19th century in its recent progression of disease control. In the 1920s, about 470,000 people were reported with measles. About 148,000 were reported with diphtheria. In 1922, about 108,000 were reported with pertussis. As recent as 1990, about 21,064 people were reported with smallpox. That's not very long ago. The changes that we've seen today are dramatic. The decline of deaths from the 7 to 9 preventable diseases has changed our lives. The change is due to increase in vaccinations. The death declines for the 9 vaccine preventable diseases, being smallpox, polio, measles, mumps, diphtheria, pertussis, rubella, tetanus, and hepatitis B. Maybe these are things you've heard of growing up and getting the vaccines yourself. Or maybe these are the things you've heard of from your parents to avoid, to not receive, to decide that there's something that you don't want to be a part of. I'm here to tell you that vaccines are good, that vaccines are what prevent diseases, prevent deaths. Now, in the 20th century, smallpox, polio, and nearly all the other 7 diseases are 100% at a 100% decline. That's amazing. Less deaths, less reported diseases in the USA. We need to understand vaccines in order to know what they are and what to do with them. Chemicals, that's a scary word. Shots, scary word. All these words are associated with negative feelings and negative outlooks. We first need to understand the difference between myths and facts when it comes to vaccines. There are a couple of myths that I'll propose to you. One being that vaccines just don't work. But let me tell you, I just told you those facts and I'll repeat a couple of them again. The CDC in 2010 reported 0 reported cases of smallpox, 0 reported cases of diphtheria, and 0 reported cases for polio. Those diseases have so far been eradicated. In the past years, there have been maybe 1 case of polio due to the new movement being that vaccines are bad. These 2010 numbers represent that vaccines do work. So the myth being that they don't work is simply false. Another important argument that vaccines don't work is that they cause autism. This is a sensitive subject, but also something that can be easily explained by science. Autism is something that is not desirable. It's created with a stigma, and when parents find out that their children have autism, it can be difficult. They may blame outside forces, and it has been the case that vaccines have taken the brunt of the judgment. However, according to research, there is no link between vaccines and autism. People need to understand the difference between correlation and causation and how to read data and facts. In 2011, the Institute of Medicine reported that vaccines given to children are safe. The 2013 CDC study reported that vaccines, in fact, do not cause autism. The antigens is what they studied. Antigens being the disease-fighting antibodies in your body and reporting the difference in those fighting foreign bodies to see what it looks like in an autistic child versus a genetically normal child. After doing this research, they saw that there's no difference in the amount of antigens in these kids' bodies before the age of 2 when they think that the mutation occurs, being the conspiracy theorists thinking that that's when the mutation occurs. But that study proves it wrong. The study proved that the chemicals in your body have not changed because of the vaccines, and that's an important and vital fact to know. The other argument that supports people who think that vaccines cause autism is based on the fact that a chemical called thimerosal a mercury-based preservative is something that causes autism. In the 20th century and also the late 19th century, people discovered that mercury is not such a great thing. Even in 1999 to 2000, thimerosal was eliminated, or only trace amount was found in vaccines because people were trying to reduce the amount of mercury exposure to children. After doing this, they saw little changes, and after studying this component for years, they found that it is in fact not harmful at all. This amount of mercury is not harmful, and the substance that is put in vaccine actually prevents contamination of multi-dose vials, so it is important that it is in our vaccine. For those who are scared, there are still vaccines that don't contain this substance if that's something that they don't want to participate in. So, another movement or theory against the belief that vaccines work is that organic is better. My generation has experienced the organics movement, going back to growing your own foods, going back to not using chemicals. While this sounds great, we do have to understand that chemicals are not bad. We are made of chemicals. Water is a chemical. The word chemical is associated with a negative light, and that needs to change. Chemicals are what keeps us alive. And this is also an intellectual issue. While it's great to use organic materials, we have to understand that the organics that make up your fruits and vegetables are in fact chemicals. People become confused when they cannot pronounce long confusing names on medications, or long confusing names on the back of a sunscreen bottle, or the back of ingredients of this or that. Not being able to understand what it says is something that maybe can be changed, but also as a personal advocate for yourself, something that you can change. So that's the misrepresentation in long confusing words doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that you don't yet understand them. Another conspiracy theory is that the government creates vaccines for profit, and that being their sole purpose. The idea is everybody behind the vaccine movement is in it to get money. Doctors giving vaccines to support conspirators, and vaccines being made to simply make money, and researchers being paid to make results. This whole idea is full of flaws and something that simply cannot be taken seriously. And I'll get into that when I talk about science and peer review. So science and peer review, if you understand how the world in science works, is that it's very critical. It's very difficult to get something published. It's very critical when you're beginning your experiment, and things are scrutinized to the point that years and years things don't even come into play because they want to make sure that you're not making mistakes. And if mistakes are made, they are excited and ready to create new results and build off of what we've learned. So the idea that science is behind the use of vaccinations should make people feel safe. Science is there to prove facts, and it's there to protect you and there to make you feel safe. Something in regards to science and peer review is that difference between studies and systematic reviews. A lot of people who are anti-vaccination concentrate on specific studies, being my friend's kid has autism and it was around the time they had vaccine, or this celebrity talks about this and that's a case study. It's not the scientific way to take personal case studies and believe them for face value. Instead, it is the smarter way to use systematic review, being a compiled amount of data, comparing and contrasting and coming to conclusion and theories. To be an advocate for yourself and understand that compiling data versus one situation or two situations is not accurate, and you need to compile everything from other sources, being the theories in place today. So experts versus scientists. This is an important issue because there have been experts who have come out and said that they are the ones to go to when it comes to vaccines. An example of this is Dr. Sears, a pediatrician. He wrote the book, The Vaccine Book, Making the Right Decision for Your Child. This book is something that many parents follow today. And the facts are that it is not based on science. The schedule he proposes on when to vaccinate your child has not even been studied, and children remain unprotected too long if they do follow this schedule. This data is only based on Dr. Sears solely. The CDC does not back this up, and it doesn't seem to even make sense in regards to medications followed by correlations of when these diseases can occur in a person. Dr. Sears' idea is that bare minimum vaccines is ideal, that parents get scared by how many vaccines children get, and that by lessening them, he can fix that problem. This doesn't seem to make sense when you know the world of medicine, and it is simply a way for him to make a profit on those seeking another excuse to not believe in vaccines. So, it is proven through history and scientific research that it is undeniable that the death rates have decreased due to vaccinations. Imagine a world without vaccines. Imagine being back in a world where people were contagious and it was unsafe. Versus imagine a world where everyone was vaccinated. In a couple decades, we could eradicate other diseases. In a couple decades, we could be stronger humans, have less death and less risk. I prompt you to get vaccinated. Support a healthy community. Others will put you at risk, and it is also important to educate them. Understand before fearing the worst and spread that education. Use reliable sources. Don't concentrate on case studies alone. Learn how to read data. And don't be quiet about this. Your safety is at stake.